those of you that are coming in. I have been cooking all day, or prepping for cooking all day, and I got my hands and stuff all, I mean, it's just a lot, right? So I'm headed now, waiting on my daughter to come out from school, and that's what I do every day. But I wanted to take a couple of minutes to share some things with you that I think can help you. We had a great scope this morning, a real intense, I think, scope about the subject of a name change, and it was awesome. I liked it. Pastor Mary, how are you? And so I got an afternoon scope for you that I think should continue to jar. Hey, Pastor Josh, you are thinking a bit more. All right. Hey, Clack. So yeah, let's do this. If you're ready for some noon thinking, can I get a piece of pie? Hey, low key, I just got through filling all my pies, and I got 19. So I had my wife to go ahead. I love you too, Ivan Land. I just had my wife go ahead and pick me up some more pie crusts so I could fill some more, because I didn't realize I made as much as, I don't know what's going on with me, why I cook so much, because I really didn't even have a whole bunch of folk over, but I don't know what it is. Anyway, so certainly you might. All right, I got a, I was thinking, and the Lord has been talking to me very consistently about armies. He's been teaching me through the scriptures, both Old and New Testaments, about how he calls certain amounts of people together to achieve and accomplish a certain purpose. And if you approach the Bible casually, it's very easy to miss how invested God is in the formation of and the deployment of armies. And I find that the prophets often use one of the names of himself, of God, and they refer to him as the Lord of many armies, the Lord of many armies. And so I, because of something that the Lord spoke to me regarding 2016, I have been researching God's use of armies, God's instructions to armies, God's need of armies, and the fact that the book of Daniel and others refer to the saints as an army. And so I am concerned about what we know about the military interests of God, and what we are aware of in terms of our lack of interest, or our lack of involvement, or our lack of cooperation and collaboration and corroboration with the right sources could lead to unnecessary deaths. Whenever there is not cooperation in an army or in any unit that God has called together, particularly those that have a war interest, the reason why they spend so much time teaching rank and order and response is because the moment you do not respond to something you were taught during a drill, you could cause somebody to come under a deathly assault by an opposing army. Hey, Jasmine Garrett, how are you? So here is what I was thinking today. When you're driving your car, and it doesn't matter who is in the steering wheel. That steering wheel has certain functions. The person seated behind the steering wheel has the function of vision. They've got to look through their front window to make sure that their lanes are great, that their speed is right. They also have the duty of making sure that where they take a left turn, that it's the right turn. If they take a right turn, it's the right turn. They also have the responsibility in the seat to give the right signals to those that are following. So the seat has a lot of importance, but there is only one thing more superior than the seat, and more superior than the one during the steering. A person can do steering and want to go left and want to go right, or accelerate, or whatever the directional powers of the person in the seat may be. But there's only one thing more superior than the seat, and it is the alignment. The alignment is an invisible system of the car that determines whether or not the relationship to the wheel and the steering wheel, the wheels and the steering wheel, are intact. There is a relationship between the method of movement, or the steering wheels, and the seat, and that relationship is facilitated based upon the alignment system. So one of the ways we went wrong in contemporary Christianity is that we emphasized freedom so much. You know, and the Bible is true. Christ died to make us free. Christ died to free us. But I don't think we've had enough discussions about to what, from what, or for what. And Paul says something very interesting in one of his letters, was that be very careful. He was teaching about grace, but he said be very cautious not to allow your freedom to become a bondage to you. He implied that there was a certain level of liberty that could make us a slave. And so I am in no way, no measure trying to imply that you should be slaved to anything or controlled by anything, but I do want you to think about why the subject of submission is the very first subject matter of any real soldier. Once you have made your decision to enlist in an army and to become a part of the war orders, the war affairs, the war prerogatives of any kingdom, of any nation, you are going to go through a massive training campaign to get your ego, your arrogance, your independence out of you, and to make you connected to a system bigger than you, to a goal bigger than you, and you're going to take on the responsibility of moving into objectives that belong to a broader body. But the thing that compromises that is the level of submission. They train your thinking, they train your instincts, they train your chemistry on how to move with other soldiers in your rank, and they also train you on how to respond to those that are giving the orders. And the thing that the Muslims got, the thing that most gangbangers have, the thing that the mafia has, the thing that the Jehovah's Witnesses have, that the Christians do not have and refuse to emphasize, is the power of submission and how it helps us to achieve kingdom objectives. Our problem is we have emphasized freedom to the extent of rebellion, and our desire to be liberated and our desire to be without parameter and without constraint and without restriction and without our desire to do that has inflamed to a gross level of independence that has actually become counterproductive to the things that the Lord wants us to achieve. Now, submission is something that has the power to bring strength under rule. It is not the depletion of strength, but it is the power of submission, the willful act to submit, that brings one's level of strength under rule. It is so important, and I don't think we hear enough godly biblical teachings on the subject of submission, because a lot of the people in the pulpits are afraid that if you preach submission, then people are going to scream control, control, control. But there is a way to teach submission from a kingdom angle and not remove people's individual rights to make decisions on their own. But there is no way around the fact that if we're going to ever disciple nations and win cities, that we have got to hit the subject of submission, and we have got to deal with rebellion and interdependence in all of its various uniforms. Rebellion is like rejection in the sense that she is very fashion savvy. She wears a lot of different outfits, a lot of different clothes. She customizes herself. She has costumes and masquerades. Some of it is defense, some of it is executions. And so I think that we have got to have a greater discussion about what submission looks like, what merits submission, who do we submit to, what the point of our submission is. And here is the challenge with it. Everybody submits. Now, I'm at 683 likes. I'm just showing you how unpopular this message is. Everybody believes in their own level of submission until it is tested. And there is no way to authenticate or to verify that you are submitted until something puts its hand on your ability or your desire to do something that you want want to do, and then something is you are giving an opposite level of instruction. So nobody really knows the depth of their submission until somebody comes in and interrupts it. So I want you to be aware that there is a level of submission that you are in need of that's going to determine whether or not you make it to the next level of influence. Because while we're talking about the 7 mountains, and while we're talking about changing businesses, and while we're talking about marketplace ministry, one of the things we're not talking about is how the birthplace of every major propaganda of the kingdom is submission to an order higher than yourself. Now, that is a propaganda and a body of authority, but it also may mean individuals. And you people that don't know or are not in position to heed and take excuses or take instructions from people, you don't qualify to have authority. What amazes me is that there are so many people around the world who are taking authority, and they are decreeing, and they are declaring, and they are binding, and they are but the problem is the way that authority works is that it has to be from a person that is subject to authority. So a person that is recklessly trying to use authority but have not found it in them to truly and deeply subject themselves to it, you are not doing nothing but loosing a bunch of hot air. Those decrees and commands and words are not leaving the ceiling, much less the spirit world, because there is a principle of authority that must be heeded by, and that's how we're going wrong in spiritual warfare. You people out there are behaving as the sons of Sceva, and you're trying to wrestle with devils that understand something that you don't, and that's protocol, that's rank, that's order. And a large part of that is our involvement in submission, in submitted cases. And so I think that warfare is dangerous when you try to go around and boss around a bunch of principalities and powers and your life is not submitted, and you want to go around and tell everybody and boast about everybody that's under you, and you're not under anybody. So it is really not impressive for you to make a resume of all the people you're over until you can talk to us about who you're under. It is so important that we have a fresh understanding of authority. The reason I'm dealing with this subject of submission is because it's one of the only ways that we're going to have a thorough theological discussion about biblical authority. And we are trying to do, and I want you to hear this with your whole self, we are trying to do in America right now by power what can only be done by authority. And the Bible gives 2 words for power in the New Testament, and they both translate in English as power, but one translates as dunamis, D-U-N-A-M-I-S, which talks about explosive force, and it talks about explosive power that is dynamic in its interest. But then there's another word that's called exousia. It's E-X-O-U-S-I-A. Now that's positional authority. That is the right to use dunamis. It is like this. It is, if you were that's right, Jasmine, if you were a police officer, the dunamis would be the gun power, which is the power that is in the bullet, but then the authority to use that gun is your badge. The fact that you've been trained, and the fact that you've been vetted, and the fact that you are licensed, bonded, and insured. You are researchable and you are traceable. That type of authority is exousia. It's the badge, and the badge gives you the right to use the gun. And the problem is we are calling revival, and we are calling reformation, and we are planting churches, and we are starting ministries, and the Lord put this burden on my heart, and the Lord put this burden in my soul, and we're doing all of this stuff outside of the reign of authority. So we are trying to perform in our own talent, in our own strength, and our own individual skills, what can only be done and executed in the realm of the spirit by badges. And we're going around like toy cops using guns that don't work and badges that are plastic, because most of us never really commit to the depth that we need to truly and honestly be submitted. Submission is a spirit. It comes upon you, and it helps you to interact well with those the Lord has put over you, those that the Lord has put around you, and those that you stand over. If I were you people out there, I would be very concerned about whether or not I notice if my pastor was submitted, because it's difficult for me to comprehend how you take orders from a guy who you don't know can take orders. It's just really, really, really strange, especially in the whole apostolic prophetic movement. You know, there's this emphasis of gift and talent and ability and platforming, and because we are so gift savvy and we are still very clueless about what offices are about, or what officials do, or how officers handle themselves. So because we are so gift heavy and we think in terms of the gift and we minister in terms terms of the gift, but we don't understand that there are official positions and offices that belong to the institution of the church that require submission to walk in the right way. So you are taking orders from people that you don't know whether or not they can say yes sir and follow order. And so I'm very concerned as God begins to disperse around this world a different degree of authority that the Church of Jesus Christ had not seen. I am very concerned about the depth of our submission. How else do you feel like ISIS and other terrorist organizations can be effective at loosing one call from a nation millions of miles away to domestic areas, one internet email, and rally all of the cooperation, all of the alliances that they need, because they emphasize and they understand the power, the military power of submission? Why do you think that a suicide bomber can break his back and bend his knee and submit his life unto death and blow all y'all up and never look back? Why? Because what they're trained in and how they are discipled at first is that your life is not your own. You have been bought into a price. And certainly Jesus died to make you free, but he does not want your freedom to ensnare you, which means that even in liberty and even in freedom, you have the ability to become a slave to your own rights. Your own rights, your own options, your own choices. So certainly the Bible, he don't control you. The Holy Ghost is not going to jump on you and force you to do anything. And his authorities, if they're godly authorities, should not do that. They shouldn't eliminate your ability to choose and decipher and discern and distinguish. But the Bible says, I set before you this day life and death. Therefore choose my admonishment, life, and you will live. But he doesn't jump in you and possess you and make you choose things you don't want to choose, which means that to a degree, those of us that have never really submitted to the cross and submitted to justification and submitted to the process of righteousness and submitted to the full comprehensive work of redemption, we have ended up becoming a slave to our own freedom and a slave to our own liberty and a slave to our own intellect and a slave to our own options. So this is my cry to you today. I believe God is wanting to change and wanting to release a new level of authority, but power is dispersed freely. Authority is given to those that trust. If you look at the life of Jesus, his circle moved in more authority than the rest, although everybody had power. He trained all 12 of them to cast out devils, heal the sick, raise the dead, and do miracles. But who did he place? He placed Peter, he placed James, and he placed John. John was the one who would see him on the Isle of Patmos and have the complete revelation of the man Jesus Christ as he was pre the earth. Peter would be the one that succeeded him in his efforts to build the ecclesia and the church, and then James would be the one that was responsible for the rest of the 11 once he left. Those were his three. He gave those three authority, not just over each other and over everybody and to each other, but to a greater order, a greater objective, a greater idea. So my question and my challenge to you is, are you really as submitted as you should be? Have you really brought your life under and become subjected to the degree you need to be? My challenge to you is, if you are a person that's going to move and flow in authority, you have got to be a person under it. And that under authority has got to be proven. It has got to be processed. It has got to be pruned. And the more authority you are in need of, the deeper your level of submission needs to be. Now, fasting will bring you under submission. Hard talks will bring you under submission. Deliberate intentionality will bring you under submission. But depending upon the level of authority that you are attempting to walk in will be the depth of submission you need to walk in. The reason we are not seeing revival in America is because most of the folks preaching it are rebels, and they have nobody to hold them accountable. Nobody can tell. There's a story of a guy that all of you will probably know, who's a revival head. I mean, he's a revivalist. The Caucasian circuits love him. The black circuits love him. He's a multi-circle and a multi-stream revivalist. Well, he fell into sexual sin with a young man, and he has a teenagers organization. So it came out that some of the young men were performing sexual acts on each other in some of his revival missions. And while he was out calling for the rain and calling for the fire and calling for the flood and calling for the revival and releasing the spirit of David, they couldn't keep their mouth off each other. So what happened was, when they got caught by an apostolic official, the apostle over the whole ministry said, all right, you've been traveling with these teenage boys. Y'all went around here dancing and percolating revival and send the rain, and let's wait on on the Lord, I need you to sit down, and I need you to take you a year and a half to get yourself submitted and to get yourself restored before you return. This is a big offense. You've been sitting down and you got all these young people around you. You are recruiting them fresh out of Bible college, and now we done caught you in sexual sin with them, and we need you to sit down now, become submitted, and get your soul together. Well, that person went back to the Lord, and that person felt like God told them that his grace was sufficient and that he didn't have to subside his ministry objectives to get his soul together, because that was the weakness and that was the thorn that God was going to deal with. So this brother took like a month break and refused to take the instructions of his authority. So the point is did he rebel then, or was he never submitted to begin with? Did he rebel then, or was he just never really under that leadership to begin with? Here is my problem. In the event that you have fallen into some wickedness like that, and you are an icon of certain subject matter, and your life has influence over people, you have got to have the integrity to submit yourself to one more senior than yourself, and an authority figure that has the right to tell you, sit down. You are not capable of leading people at this level, heralding the messages that you're doing. He went to God. He usurped the one that God put over him, because apparently the same God that told him to submit to man didn't send the man the email, I guess, to let him know that he didn't need to take a break and he didn't need to sit down. So we have a very strong problem with the issue of submission. And this issue of submission is why we never really get redemptive movements out of the mistakes of people. If you are a minister, if you are a leader, you have got to afford the right to make a mistake and have a bad moment. But the way you afford the right to make a mistake and have a bad moment is you have got to have parties that know that they can give you instructions when your sanity has been unsettled and your logic has been disturbed, and what you see with your eyes and want with your belly has overtaken you, and you have started to do your own thing. The reason why revival tarries in America is because the folk going around talking about it's coming ain't submitted. So we're going to see the type of revival that you put under a tent. You get a couple of jewels and a couple of diamonds, a few gold teeth and some oil, and you're going to go back home. Because really, beyond your mouth and your language, you are not really submitted. Your heart is lofty, puffed up, haughty. Your plans, your intentions, your decisions, all of it, all in the name of being free and being an individual and being unique. You have not learned to bring that strength under command. Your gift is going to do nothing different from American Idol or any other talent show. When that gift is done, it still needs the wisdom and the sobriety of an office to be lasting. That gift ain't got the power to change a nation. That gift has got to be brought under command, because it's in the office where the records are. It's in the office where the files are. It's where where the highest communication systems are. You are running around here like a scout and a free will agent and somebody who's a field agent, but you don't have an official place and posture because you're not under authority and you're not submitted and you're not under. So I believe that the next move of God, before God pours out his spirit of all flesh, as he's making sure that people understand the principle of alignment, that you can be steering the right way and going in the right direction, but if you are out of alignment, you are going to crash, you're going to self-destruct, you're probably going to hurt some other people, you might hurt your own fool self. It does matter in this hour how you are apostolically aligned and how you have lined up your life with the invisible source, because a real source, they ain't gonna have to be on the forefront, they ain't gonna have to be taking all the credit, they ain't gonna have to be stamping you and branding you and say I made you and say I built you. A real alignment source don't mind being under the hood, being in the cut, but they know that they have a relationship with the person that is steering. And I want to ask you a question: why you hustling and why you grinding and why you building and why you prayer breakfasting and why you conferencing and why you all of this and you steering, you may be in the right direction, but I guarantee you a crash is scheduled because you are not really authentically and legitimately aligned in the way you need to be. If you got a high word and you got a high vision and you got a high call, you have got to have a deep submission life. You have got to understand what it is to move with people that you are not afraid to say yes sir, no sir to. You have got to be submitted and you have got to be under authority. And if you're not, expect the Muslims to continue to outpace us. in their recruitment, in their advancement, in their ability to train cities. It's not just that the devil is giving them money and the devil is raising them up in America. What we are missing about the militant Muslim agenda, and for most of us, here's how bad we done got. The Jehovah Witnesses is more militant than most of you people. Most of you on this scope ain't went to nobody's house and knocked on nobody's door to ask them if they've received since they believe. So even the passive Jehovah's Witnesses, whose whole religion is based on lunacy and insanity, they have become more militant than we do. And most of you tongue-talking, hookah messiah, come time about time believers who cast out devils on Sunday is running from these old puny Jehovah Witnesses on Monday, hiding behind your little blinds because they know more Bible than you. There is a militism in them. And so the reason why we are not as gathered as we need to be, and we're not moving to take out cities like we need to, is because we have not learned submission. So that's my soapbox for today. I think we need to be submitted. And I'm not just talking about to your friends and your buddies and the people that talk to you. I'm talking about you need to be submitted to somebody who the buck can stop when you are out of your mind, or you need to take a break, or you need to go on vacation, or you need to whatever. The buck has got to stop somewhere. It's what the U.S. Marine Forces do, the Navy SEALs, every real army is bonded and joined by the power of submission. By act of our will, we are submitted and joined together. The church's problem is we full of rebels, just rebellious, anointed, miracle working, prophesying, prayer line rebels. And then if we do get a little fake, fraudulent, dollar store level of submission, it's with somebody we know ain't gonna check us to begin with. It requires no inconvenience and it requires no discomfort. We really do know if we submit to the dude over in Zambia that we still gonna be able to do what we want to do in America, because that brother worried about how he gonna get clean water. He don't know what you're doing with your money. He don't know what you're doing with your family. He don't know whether or not you're treating your wife right. So we only submit to the degree that we're comfortable. But submission is not submission until it carries the risk of invading your space and your privacy. And that is it for today. My encouragement is that we get submitted, and as a result of it, we move in a different degree of authority. So that's all I want to talk to you about. Nobody is beyond it. Nobody is bigger than it. You need to submit. Every one of you. You talking about you a fivefold officer, you called to the fivefold, then you've got to verify and you have got to make sure that it is known that you are a person that is submitted to authority. Just an afternoon thought, and if you are somebody who is not, you're about to go get your afternoon coffee, your afternoon tea. Something you need to think about is, how can I submit to the greater level? Can I be proactively submitted? Am I submitted to the level that I need to be? Is there fear and mistrust and worry and paranoia? Am I around somebody worth submitting to? Does the fact that I feel that way is proof that I have pride? Am I proud and rebellious and think that in order to submit to somebody, they got to be more talented than me, and they got to know Bishop Jakes, or they got to be far along the line? Maybe you're not really looking for an authority figure. You're looking for a talent scout. You want somebody to put you on and give you a show and give you an opportunity. But you need to review and evaluate and examine the quality of your submission, because it's so important if you are going to be those that move in authority. So that's all. That's my thought today. Every real army moves by, acts by, in the interest of submission and their ability to take out orders and carry out protocols as divulged by somebody that's become an authority. All right, that's all I got. I love you. I think we should think about this and talk about this, and stop rocking in them old crazy basements with them acoustic guitars.